Let's now discover some principles that guide the way we perceive and organize visual information. The principles of perceptual organization developed here are much like heuristics, which are mental shortcuts for solving visual problems. These laws were discovered by German thinkers such as Max Wertheimer, Wolfgang Köhler, and Kurt Kafka, who founded what we call Gestalt psychology. What do you see in those pictures? For the first picture, if you answer an old lady, you're right. But if you answer a young lady, you're right too. For the second picture, you probably see either two faces or a vase, both answers being correct too. To make sense of the world, it is necessary to organize incoming sensations into meaningful information. Gestalt psychologists believe this can be done by perceiving individual sensory stimuli as a meaningful whole. The whole is different than the sum of its parts. For example, the beauty of a musical melody does not depend on individual notes as such, but rather on the whole continuous tune. In other words, the whole, such as a picture or a car, carries a different and altogether greater meaning than its individual components: paint, canvas, brush, or tire, paint, metal. In viewing the whole, a cognitive process takes place. The mind makes a leap, perceiving the whole rather than isolating the parts. We visually and psychologically attempt to make order out of chaos, to create harmony or structure from seemingly disconnected bits or pieces of information. Gestalt psychologists developed a set of principles to explain perceptual organization, or how smaller objects are grouped to form larger significant ones. These principles are often referred to as the laws of perceptual organization. Let's now discover some of these laws. Law of proximity. We tend to group elements that are closer together and consider that they belong to the same object. The points on the left appear to be grouped in vertical columns, while those on the right appear to be grouped in horizontal rows. Law of similarity. We tend to group elements that are similar together and consider that they belong to the same object. On the left, even though the vertical and horizontal separation of the dots is the same, we tend to see black and white lines of dots. On the right, we see a 2 in a circle, even though there's no difference between the pale blue circles and the dark blue ones. Law of continuity. We tend to group together elements that seem to be a continuation of one another and consider that they belong to the same object. We see this figure as composed of two lines, not as a combination of two angles. Law of symmetry. We tend to group together symmetrical elements and consider that they belong to the same object. Asymmetrical objects tend to force the viewer to search for symmetry. Here, two symmetrical figures are perceived. Law of closure. We tend to see incomplete patterns as complete. For example, this fragmented circle is seen as a whole circle in spite of the gaps between the lines. I thank you for your time.